Well, hello, church. Good morning. Good to see everybody. We are coming to you this morning live from Aiken, South Carolina, where we are opening the grand opening of our brand new facility.
Yeah, praise the Lord.
So this morning's already been great. We had overflow seating. Campus Pastor Matt Steelman at the first service. We're about to do this second service. We're pumped about that.
Yes, very excited about it. It's been such a gift. And if you've been around New Spring for a little while, you know we are in Vision 2030, where we aspire to see 10 churches planted and all of our campuses getting in permanent facilities. And so today is the culmination of at least one of those things, which is this facility opening, paid for in cash because you're generous. So all I want to say to you is thank you. All around the state, we're so thankful. We are all so thankful that you would invest in what God's doing here, and we really do believe it's only the beginning of it, but man, he's been faithful to this point.
Yeah, that's good news, and so we're grateful for that. And y'all, we've got a really special day planned. We are concluding today our Great Commission series. Over the last several weeks, you guys have been leaning into that. We've got discipleship opportunities at every campus, starting into an evangelism class that's rolling out at your campus this week. And I invited one of my friends, Dave Ferguson, to come today, and you're gonna hear from him in just a moment. It's his first time being with us on a Sunday morning in New Spring Church. He's actually gonna be training our staff later this week. But Dave runs a ministry called Exponential, and it's about leadership development, church planting, and he's got a really practical message to show you and I how we might be able to activate on the Great Commission in our everyday life. So with all of that said, New Spring Church, would you stand on your feet, put your hands together, and welcome Pastor Dave Ferguson to the stage.
Hey, all right. It's good to be with you, New Spring, at all of our locations. And you might be going like, why is this guy from Chicago? Sounds like he has a Chicago accent. What's he doing in South Carolina? Well, I'll tell you what, I kind of feel like I'm from South Carolina. I mean, yesterday I got to cheer for the Clemson Tigers to come from behind to get a win. That was pretty lackluster to get a win. There we go. Yesterday with my dinner over at Sullivan's, I had sweet tea. And this morning for breakfast, I ate at the Waffle House. So I feel like I'm starting to feel at home here. Let me tell you something before I jump in. I love the leadership team here at New Spring. And I also, I've been a fan from afar of New Spring for some time now, but getting up close to see your 2030 vision, what you want to do with both new locations, but then also all the church planting. I'm telling you, I get around a lot of churches across the country and even around the world. What is happening here is very special because this is a church that is more preoccupied about God's kingdom than building their own castle. You hear me? Building God's kingdom more than just their own castle. So I'll tell you what, do me a favor, wherever you are, whether it's here or all of our locations, just give somebody a fist bump near you and go like, yes, God's kingdom over castle. Say that, God's kingdom over castle. There you go, very good. We're wrapping up the series on the Great Commission. And you know what? I think when it comes to the Great Commission, sometimes we just miss the obvious. Sometimes we just miss the obvious. Let me tell you a quick story. This been a little while ago. I was at some friends of Sue, my wife and I's, Jim and Julie. We were at their house. They invited us over for dinner. So we go over to their house for dinner. Jim and Julie and Sue, they're all in the kitchen. I'm in the dining room, and I noticed this print on the wall. And I'm just taken with this. It's a print of a painting, and it's just really compelling and attractive. And so I just kind of called back into the kitchen to all of them. I said, man, I love, Jim and Jill, I love this print that you have on the wall here. And all of a sudden I can hear Jim, my friend, laughing. I'm like, what's up with that? I mean, it's just a compliment. And then I hear Julie kind of chuckling in. And then I said, I just said I love this print. And then my wife, it's like she's guffawing. I mean, she can't laugh loud enough about the whole thing. And I'm like, what? So Sue steps into the dining room and she says, well, you should love it. We gave it to them. And then, true story, then she adds on top of it, and furthermore, not only did we give it to them, we have the exact same print in our house. Okay, talk about missing the obvious, right? Sometimes we miss the obvious. And I'll tell you, here's what I think. And I'm not gonna tell you particularly anything new about the Great Commission. I mean, we just did a great series. If you haven't been here for every week of it, go back. I went and watched all the videos on there, at least most of them. Watch those video teachings, really good stuff. But here's what I am gonna do. I'm gonna show us where we've missed the obvious. I think there is a how we can actually accomplish the Great Commission. And I'm talking to every one of you individually and myself in particular. There's a how that we can do this. And that's where I want to land the plane before we get done today. I was pulling into my driveway, this has been a few months ago, and I noticed a big orange moving truck pulling in next door. Now, what does that mean when you got a big orange moving truck pulling in next door? That's exactly right. New neighbors. And getting new neighbors is like the adult version of the new kid showing up in elementary school, right? I mean, it might be your new best friend. It could be a troublemaker, you just don't know. It could be like some neighbors I had, who were constantly letting their pit bull loose in my backyard and then got busted for drug possession. They were kind of hard to love, all right? Could be like that, you don't know. But no matter who these new neighbors are, the Bible says this: love your neighbor as yourself. In fact, it not only says it once, it says it 8 different times. Love your neighbor, 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 love your neighbor. Everybody at all locations, what does it say? Exactly right. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's what it says. 8 times. Sometimes that's hard. But the truth is, most of my neighbors, and see if this checks out with you, most of my neighbors have been, pretty decent folks. Pretty decent folks. And see, the real problem isn't so much that loving my neighbors is hard. The real challenge is I don't know specifically how. How am I specifically, tangibly, practically, every day supposed to love them? How do I love them in a way that shows them God's love? How do I love them in a way that actually introduces them to Jesus? How do I love them in a way that does do what Jesus challenges us to accomplish the Great Commission? How? So here's what I want you to do, because I want all of you to be fully engaged in this. I want you to take this home. I want you to start using this starting tomorrow. So do me a favor. All of our locations, every one of you, bring to mind the name of a new neighbor. Now, when I say neighbor, I'm going to use it the way the Bible does when it says love your neighbor, because a neighbor could be where you live, someone next door, across the street, in proximity. It could also be where you work. It could be your work, the office next to you, the cubicle next to you, the workplace with you, where you work. It could also be where you play, where you work out, where you hang out, whatever recreational activities you're involved in, the teams you're on, where you live, where you work, or you play. I want you to think of someone who's relatively new in one of those neighborhoods. Got me? Bring a name to mind, and I'm going to give you 10 seconds. We're going to do a little neighbor nudge at all of our locations, 10 seconds, and I want you to name that person. Turn to the person next to you or find someone near you and name that person. Say that name out loud so you'll have them in mind the whole time I'm talking. You ready? Ready? Here we go. And 10 seconds. Go. Name that person. Good. Very good. All right, you got a name. So here's what I want you to think of. Okay, what is your plan? How are you going to love them? The Bible says, love your neighbor, 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 and love your neighbor. That's right. That's exactly right. So what's your plan? How do you intend to love them? How do you intend to show them God's love? As we've been talking in this series, how will you carry out the Great Commission? See, when I first became a Christ follower, I was so pumped. I was so excited, particularly about the grace of God, that he would love me, just as I am. That's true, just as I am, not as I should be. I was so charged about that in the life of Jesus. I wanted to share that with everybody. And I tried. In very obnoxious ways, I tried. I was one of those people, I did street evangelism. You know what that is? I'm out in the streets and I'm asking people questions like, have you come to the place in your spiritual life where you know for certain if you die tonight, you go to heaven? I'm asking strangers that question. I'm asking them questions they didn't want to answer. I'm going door to door. I'm knocking on doors, honest to goodness. People open the doors, don't know who I am. I'm giving them answers to questions they're not even asking. I was well-intentioned. But here's what happened. In all my enthusiasm, it did not work. So that didn't work. So here, I swung the pendulum the other way, okay? That didn't seem to be work. So I swung the pendulum the other way. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna live my life as best I can like Jesus. And people will be able to see it in me. Just live my life, they'll see it in me. You know what happened then? People thought I was a good guy. I think people enjoyed having me as a neighbor. They thought I was a good neighbor. But nobody came to know the love of God or came to know the person and follow the person of Jesus. That didn't work, this didn't work. And I kept thinking there has to be a better way. And by this point, I was actually pastoring a church. And so I not only wanted a better way for me, but I wanted a better way for the people in my church. Now, for a very long time, I was familiar with God's blessing strategy. The blessing strategy for reaching the world, it's in Genesis chapter 12, and it's Abraham, where God is speaking to Abraham, and God says, listen, Abraham, here's how we're gonna get this done. I'm gonna bless you, I'll make your name great, and then you're gonna be a blessing. And then all those people on the earth will be blessed through you. Okay, if you didn't catch that, go ahead and take a look at that on the screen. It's right there. This was God's blessing strategy from the very beginning. He was saying, I'm gonna bless you, Abraham. I want you to be a blessing, and that's how we're gonna eventually bless the whole world. Now, if I'm honest with you, I kind of read this and I kind of thought of the pithy saying, oh, you're blessed to be a blessing. And it felt like something that ought to be on a bumper sticker, right? It felt like something that maybe would be on a refrigerator magnet or sewn into a pillow that would sit on my grandmother's couch. It didn't feel like a real strategy for how you're gonna change the world. Then I ran across an absolutely fascinating doctoral study. I know that sounds kind of like an oxymoron, doesn't it? A fascinating doctoral study. But I'm telling you, here's what it was. It was titled this, Blessers versus Converters. That was the study. Blessers versus Converters. And the study was based on 2 teams of missionaries that both went to Thailand. But they both went to Thailand with 2 distinctly different missional strategies. First of all, the converters. There were converters and blessers. The converters went with the sole intention of trying to convert people. They were going to evangelize people. They would say, we're going to save souls. Then there were the blessers. They went with the intention of, I'm going to be a blessing to people, Genesis 12. They would say, I'm just here to bless whoever God puts in my path. Both in word and deed, I want to be a blessing. They followed both of them for 2 years, and here's what they discovered. Number 1, they discovered this, that the blessers, their presence in the community, resulted in tremendous amounts of social good. It actually created a better society, a better community life. What you might call, you familiar with this term? Social capital. It created social capital. Nothing for the converters. No evidence of any of that social capital for the converters. Second finding, and this was very surprising. The blessers had 50 times as many conversions as did the converters. The blessers, after 2 years, saw 100 people find and follow Jesus, the converters only 2. And at the end of this doctoral study, what they concluded, they said the way to accomplish the Great Commission is way back like God said in Genesis 12, is to be a blesser. So I'm noodling on this, and then I came across this eye-opening kind of research from the Barna group. What Barna did is they went out and asked our friends. Think about the name that you said a little while ago. They went and asked people like that, our friends, what would you value in a person with whom you'd talk about spiritual matters? You're thinking about that name? They asked that person, what would you value? What would you be looking for in a friend with whom you could talk about spiritual matters? And by the way, quick sidebar, 79% of people say they would love to talk to a friend about spiritual things. But now let's figure out what kind of friend. What kind of friend? And here's what they said. Here's the kind of friend I'd want to talk to. They said, number 1, I'd want to have a friend who would listen without judgment. Who would listen without judgment. Hear me on this, okay? Some of the stuff, we've missed the obvious. Listening is one of the purest acts of love that we can undertake. I mean, doesn't it feel good when you have a conversation and it's like someone's actually listening to you? They're not just waiting to talk. Listening. And here's the sad part. The sad part is this: 2/3 of people who were surveyed said they had nobody in their life that would listen to them without judgment. So that was the first thing. Here's the kind of friend that the people around you are looking for, and they'll talk to you about spiritual matters if you'll listen without judgment. Secondly, if you allow them to draw their own conclusions. Allow them to draw their own conclusions. This is such a great reminder. Our friends and neighbors are not projects. Even when we're talking about the Great Commission, they are not projects. They are people. And they're looking for people who won't force a conclusion on them, but instead will love them, befriend them, and trust them to have their own spiritual journey. Okay? It's the Holy Spirit's job to convict them. It's your job to love them. Let's keep our job descriptions clear. Now, and you continue to love them without compromise. And I think back on my failed attempts I shared with you. Remember both of them? Assaulting people and then being just passive about the whole thing. Both times my heart was in a good place. It's just that my strategies were poor and not biblical. And I think both God and our friends want us to kind of get out of the way sometimes. If the gospel's true and someone is sincerely searching, it will prove itself to be true. And we need to trust God, trust His Spirit to do the work, just like God allowed us to have our own journey. Remember when before you decided to become a Christ follower, you did some stupid stuff, right? Am I right? Come on, let's be real. I did. And I continue sometimes. But God still trusts us. We have to trust our friends in the same way. They have their own journey. Well, here's the third thing. So, number one, they're looking for someone who will listen without judgment, someone who will allow me to draw my own conclusions. But then third, now this is important, it's a little different. They do want a friend who can share their own perspective with confidence. They want somebody in their life who has some conviction about spiritual things and is willing to share it. But here's what you have to do. You have to, what I call, pay the relational rent. You got to pay the relational rent by investing enough in that relationship, by listening to them and loving them no matter what they ultimately decide. You're there to love them and to be a friend with them. And when you do that, you'll get a chance to share your story. You'll get a chance to share God's grace. You'll get a chance to tell them how Jesus and His grace and His love and the direction He's given your life is unlike anything you've ever experienced before, and how that's what they need. All right, so you got that doctoral study. You got this Barna research. So my brother John and I, we started this church in Chicago. We began to go back to the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and begin to dig into the life of Jesus and see how He did it. And here's what emerged. What emerged for us was there were a handful of what I would call kind of missional practices. Practices that Jesus did over and over again to love people, to befriend people. And we took like 5 of them, the 5 most significant of them, and we put them in a very memorable acronym, okay? I like to give things handles, so you can actually take this home with you. I want you to take this home and put it to work on Monday morning. So I'm gonna give it to you. And again, I think these are gonna be obvious things, but you've probably never, unless you've read the book or done this or heard us talk somewhere else, you've probably never done it this way before. But I'm telling you, this is how we can actually go about loving our neighbors and accomplishing the Great Commission. Let me give you the 5, all right? They actually spell the word bless, all right? We're gonna be able to remember these. The B, this is a little bit of a stretch, but work with me. The B is begin with prayer. All right, B, begin with prayer. It all begins by praying. You begin to pray, and I encourage people, I gave you 1 this morning, but I encourage you to think of 4 different people at least that you're praying for where you live or where you work or where you play. Pick one of those spaces, live, work, or play. Pick 4 people. And prayer is both how you discover your mission, but also partly how you do the mission. Again, let's look at Jesus. As we look at Jesus in Luke chapter 6, when He starts His earthly ministry, His earthly mission, the first thing He does is says, He went on a mountain and He prayed. And so what we do is just like Jesus, we begin with prayer. What we can't underestimate is this. Okay, you're gonna start now praying for these 4 friends. God's already been at work long before you showed up. He wants them to find and follow Jesus worse than you do, right? In fact, he died for that cause. He died for that cause. So, but you're gonna begin to pray for them. And maybe you pray for them by just walking your neighborhood and you're praying for each house. Or maybe when you walk into the office, you're praying for each office or each cubicle, or in the work site, praying for those other coworkers. What I would always do is I would literally in my journal, I would write out the word bless, and then I'd write down these 4 names. In my case, it was 4 couples. I'd write down those 4 couples, and I would begin my day by praying for them. God, just give me an opportunity. I know your work, give me an opportunity. In fact, now we actually have an app, and if you want to download the app, it's free. It'll actually tell you the names of your neighbors to kind of help you get jump-started on this. So that's the very first thing. You with me? So first of all, that's what you do. You begin with prayer. Then the L is listen. If you read the Gospels, go back and read them again, Jesus was constantly asking questions and then listening. Sadly, I think we're in a time where Christians are more known for their own talking than they are listening. And if we truly hope to bless people around us, we have to first get to know them. And any relationship starts with listening. We need to hear about their hopes. We need to hear about their dreams. We need to lean in and listen to their heartbreaks, hear their stories. This is, again, what Jesus did. I love this. In Luke chapter 18, Jesus meets this blind man. And if you notice, Jesus doesn't just assume like, oh, this guy's blind, he needs to see. He gives him the dignity of asking him a question. He says, what do you want me to do? And then he waits. He gives him the dignity, and then he listens. He listens as that blind man responds. So you begin with prayer, then you listen, then the E, you guys are gonna love this one, okay? This is perfect. I love this, my favorite one. The E, my personal favorite, is eating. Can I get an amen? All right. And again, we see Jesus doing this. You see him at Matthew's party. You see him in the story of Zacchaeus. And the story of Zacchaeus, I love it because he comes over for lunch. Actually, it's kind of fascinating. He actually invites himself over for lunch at Zacchaeus' house. Hey, how about I go to your place and have lunch? And it says at the end of that, it says, salvation has come to this house today. Salvation's come here. There's something about eating together that moves a relationship from acquaintance to friendship faster than almost anything else. Think about your own story. Think about some of your best friends. Okay, quick. All of our locations. Just raise your hand if you're married. If you're married, let's married. Okay, we got a lot of married folks here. Very good. My hunch is at some point, at some time, you're going like, wow, I think this thing's serious. I think this thing's serious. And there's a good chance that happened over food. For my wife, Sue, and I, it was Aurelio's Pizza. It was Aurelio's Pizza. I'm going like, wow, I think I got a chance with her, right? And I'm telling you, there are a few ways that can better bless people around us than by sharing a meal together. So the E stands for eat. And think about this. How many times do you eat a day? How many times do you eat a day? Some said 5. No, I wasn't really thinking 5. I was thinking 3. Okay, but we'll go with 3. You know, so 3 times a day. If there's 3 meals you eat a day, 7 days a week. Think about this. That's 21 opportunities to love your neighbor. And here's what I love about the blessed practices. What I love about the blessed practices is you can do it without adding anything else to your life. It just becomes a part of your life. You don't have to show up at church to do this thing. It's not another program. It's not something you squeeze into your schedule. No, this is just how you love your neighbor. And you use those opportunities. I have a friend, Alan Hirsch. He puts it this way. He says, we could literally change the world through eating. That sounds like fun, doesn't it? So you begin with prayer. You're praying for that person you named. As you get opportunities, you listen to them. You're intentionally listening, getting to know them. You're building a relationship. E, you find ways to eat with them. And when I say eat, I mean it could be coffee. It could be dessert. It could be a meal. You could do like Jesus, invite yourself over to their house, okay? There's lots of different ways you could do this. Then the next S, the first S, is serve. Because here's the deal. My experience has been, if you're praying for somebody, and then you're really listening to them as you get a chance to interact with them, and then you get to the place where you're sharing meals or dessert or going out for coffee every now and then, what's happening? What's happening? Huh? Talk to me. What's happening? You're becoming friends. You're becoming friends. What was Jesus' nickname? If you remember Jesus' nickname, his nickname was friend of sinners. That was part of his story. I'm just going to become a friend of sinners. That's what we're talking about. And in many ways, what I'm giving you here, this is like a remedial course on friendship. All right? Some of you, a while ago, I had all the married folks raise their hand. How many of you are single? How many are single all of our locations? Let's raise your hands. Yeah? Single? If you're looking for a date, I'm telling you, this stuff works for you too. You know, you pray for them, you listen, you invite them out to a meal, right? It's a remedial course in friendship. And once you do those things, guess what? Here's what happens next. The first S is serve. They will tell you how to love them. They'll tell you, because you're friends now. They're going to tell you, man, here's what's going on at work. This really, it's brutal. Man, I'm struggling financially. Or if they're married and got kids, here's what's going on with my kids and my family. Or here's the struggles I'm having with my parents. They will tell you how to love them, and you serve them by loving them the way they need to be and want to be loved. So if you do this, if you begin with prayer, and then you listen, and then you eat, and then you serve them, love them the way they want to love, guess what? You will get the opportunity. You will have paid the relational rent. You'll get a chance to share your story. I'm telling you, they will ask you, what makes you different? They'll want to hear from you. And so the second S is story. Here's what I want to do. I want to tell you about my friend Michael. And part of the reason I want to tell you about my friend Michael is because I was using the blessed practices, but it was really through Michael that I became convinced that this would actually work. I'm going like, no, this stuff that we get way back in Genesis 12 that we see Jesus doing, this works today. The first time church came up with my friend Michael, he told me just point blank, he was mad at God. He was mad at God and he thought church was just a bunch of BS. He didn't say BS, but you get the idea. Part of Michael's story, he grew up in a very abusive home. He actually moved out on his own at 15 years of age. Imagine that, on his own at 15. Very determined young guy, finished high school even though he's on his own. Made his way to college, got in college, actually was a D1 athlete, track and field. Almost ran a 4-minute mile. Married a beautiful wife, eventually actually started his own company where he was the president and did quite well for himself in many ways financially. When I got to know Michael, it was because both our boys ran track and cross country together in high school. And when I got to know Michael, I'll never forget what he told me at one point. He said, Dave, for 20 years, I felt like I've had the burden of not just living one life, but of living 2 lives. He said, Dave, for 20 years, I felt like I've had the burden of not just living one life, but of living 2 lives. And there was a backstory. When Michael was in grad school in California, him and his best friend Jay went out for a drive. Now, Michael described Jay, he said, Jay was just this terrific human being. He was just a deeply spiritual guy, a very moral guy. He said, Jay was the kind of guy I really wanted to be like. I admired Jay. They went for this drive and they got in a car accident. Michael survived, but Michael's best friend Jay did not. And he watched Jay die in that car. And Michael was found negligent. And so as you can imagine, my friend Michael every day lived with the guilt and the shame. He eventually moved away from Southern California, never spoke of the story. I take that back. He told his wife. His wife was the only person that knew about this story. And so for the next 20 years, as he described it, he felt the burden of not living just one life, but living 2 lives, one for him and one for his friend Jay. So, begin with prayer. I'd write in my journal, write the word bless, and I'd write Michael's name in my journal. I really liked Michael. I was enjoying getting to know Michael, and I did. I really wanted to see him come to know God's love and the person of Jesus. And so every day I'd write Michael's name in my journal. In fact, I prayed for Michael for over 3 years. Listen. Since both our boys ran cross country and track in the same high school program, we both loved the sport. The teams did really, really well, which made it easier to love. We both loved our boys, and the love of that sport, the love of our boys kind of drew us together. And so we'd be at meets and we would be chatting it up about our boys and about sports and other things. Occasionally we'd travel out of state for big meets, you know what that's like, and we would go together and we'd talk. And when we're talking, now I'm listening. I'm praying for him in my journal. Begin with prayer, listening, having conversations, getting to know him, knowing what's going on in his life, what's going on in the past. It was actually Michael that turned the conversation towards spiritual things. And he said, you know what, we should get together for breakfast sometime. Begin with prayer, listen, and now eat. And we started this routine where we would get together for breakfast regularly. We'd go out to breakfast, hang out. Michael was kind of a foodie, so occasionally he'd find like a new restaurant he really liked. So he'd like, hey, we need to check out this other restaurant. It might be a dinner or something like that or a lunch, and so we go check that out. But now here I am, so I'm praying for him. I'm listening to him. We're starting to share meals. What's happening? What's happening between me and Michael? You know, what is it? Yeah, we're becoming friends. This is not hard. We've missed the obvious. We're becoming friends. Now, Michael was a guy, like I told you, he started his own company, very determined guy. He was used to being the boss. And I remember one breakfast he says to me, he says, hey, Dave, you know what? I've hired executive coaches to help me with my company in the past, but you know what? I'd like for you to be my spiritual coach. Would you be my spiritual coach? And I was like, sure, I'm glad to be your spiritual coach. And so we would get together. We would meet, eat, talk. We talk about running, talk about life, and we talk about spiritual things. That's how the first S, I was serving him. And I'll never forget the breakfast where he told me, he said, it was 20 years ago today that I killed my friend. He'd never told anybody else other than his wife when he blurts out those words. We were at a little cafe having breakfast together. And it wasn't just that breakfast. And it wasn't just my praying, my listening, my eating, my serving, my storytelling. There were a bunch of other people too. And God is always at work, okay? His Spirit's always at work. But that was the day that my friend Michael said yes to Jesus. And he got to find out that, you know what, as horrific as that experience has been, as much as that burden he'd been carrying for the last 2 decades was, that he could find forgiveness. That he could also find redemption. As horrific as that story was, that if he would give it to God, God could use that story for great good. I got to help my friend, okay, my friend Michael, come to the love of Jesus, and I got then a chance to baptize him. What I'd like to do is, I brought this video along because this goes back a few years. I told you, like, this is when I came convinced. But this is Michael telling his story, and I just want you to hear it from him firsthand.
I really did not have a relationship with God, and I did not think about it. It wasn't a goal or objective of mine. And my mentality was, if you want to get something done, you can only really rely on you. And so that's the way I approached the world for many, many years. My name is Michael Kinney. I'm married to Stacy, and I have 4 children, Austin, Zachary, Aiden, and Zane, and I've been coming to community for 2 years. Jay was my roommate in graduate school. So February of 1997, Jay and I went to go see a concert. And on the way home from that concert, back to our apartment, we were in a car wreck. Jay died in the car wreck, extremely emotionally devastated by the loss of my friend. And I felt very responsible, and I was very, very angry with God. So I decided then that I'm gonna live 2 lives, one for me and one for Jay. And I began trying to do that through my activities. Everything that I would achieve, it never was enough. It never made me feel differently. I still felt very angry, very alone. It didn't matter how hard I tried or what I accomplished. Something was still missing. I just kept, walking around carrying these bags of bricks, never even considering putting them down and maybe asking for help. And my oldest son, Austin, he began going to church with his good friend Caleb. I remember he got baptized, and it really took me aback that he had, on his own, figured out something that I could never figure out. And so I began going to church with a more open mind, trying to pay attention to the signs and to the messages that people were sharing with me. I also have a son who has severe autism, and he has, no ego. And so I have this wonderful reflection of what Jesus Christ looks like without ego with my son Aiden. So the combination of watching Austin and watching and reflecting on my relationship with Aiden really turned my views from egoicism and hubris to humility. And then I was invited to go to a small group, and I knew sort of what that was, but I didn't really know what it was. I'd never been in a small group, and I was very nervous. Very nervous to attend my first session. Particularly the subject was on regret. I remember thinking, wow, how apropos that my first small group is on the subject that I need to learn the most about. And it really opened my eyes. The kind of the tipping point for me was on the 20th anniversary of this car accident, which killed my friend. It's a dark day for me, a very upsetting day. And my family doesn't have any idea, except for my wife, why am I so upset? Not just all of the time, why am I sort of angry all of the time, but why am I particularly upset this day? What I found was that after I started sharing this story, particularly with my family, and then in some cases with my close friends, that every single time I talked about what happened, it was like I was taking a brick out of the bag and putting it on the ground, and my load was just getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And every single time I did it, I felt better. For most of my life, I thought that asking for help was a sign of weakness. And what I've come to realize is that asking for help is really a sign of strength. And that if you really want some help and you really want to go to the right place, the best place to go is asking God for help and accepting Jesus into your life.
So why does a guy from Chicago travel down here to get a chance to speak to you? Here's why. Because I want that for you. I want that for you and your neighbor, the person you named. See, so what makes that special? I am a pastor. And so consequently, I do get to baptize people pretty regularly. But you know what's different about that one? You know what's different about that one? Yeah, that's my friend. That's my friend. If I was sitting there, that'd be the person I would have named. I want that for you, and I want it for your neighbor. Now, if you'd know Michael, he's kind of a character. He likes big things and do them in a big way. And so when he decided, after he said yes to Jesus, he wanted to be baptized. And so he didn't just want to do it on any Sunday. He wanted to do it on Easter. And so it was a few months later that he invited people all across the community, even people from out of state flew in town because they weren't necessarily all believers, but they were excited for him. And at his invitation, they wanted to be supportive. And so, I don't know, he probably had 25 or 30 people that came and just to see him get baptized. And real quick, this is me and his son, Austin. We got a chance to do this one Easter. How about that? Is that awesome? And again, that's what I want you. I want you to be able to experience that. And that's what Jesus said when he said, go into all the world, right? He says, as you go, what I want you to do, you bless people. You begin by praying for them. You listen to them. You share meals. You can do these things, right? You can do these things. These are not hard things to do. These are things we can all do. When you discover what pains and hurts they have, you find ways to serve them. And then when you get the right opportunity, you go ahead, share the story. Share your story, share the gospel story. Because you'll have paid the relational rent. So here's my challenge as we wrap up. My challenge is, it's very simple. 2 things. Number 1, do one of these practices every day. Begin with prayer, listen, eat, serve, story. Do one of those practices every day. You can do that. And I know sometimes Christians are like, well, what if I just pray for them? Does that count? Yes, that counts. All right, you're all good. Just do one every day. And then find somebody else, and I'd say in particular, in a small group, just ask every week when you meet, who did you bless this week? Hey, who did you bless this week? And it's not a guilt trip thing, and it's an encouragement thing. Who did you bless this week? Because I'm telling you, this is how, okay, this is the answer to the question we started with. This is how you can love your neighbor. This is how you love your neighbor. And I'm telling you, if enough of us do that across New Spring, this is how we could change the whole state of South Carolina. And if enough of us do it across the country, this is how we could change the country and really change the world. And I'm convinced, this goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 12, when God was saying, listen, Abraham, it's as simple as this. I'm gonna bless you, and then you're gonna bless others, and we're gonna bless the entire world, right? It's obvious. This is how we can do this. We just have to love people, befriend people with these simple practices over and over again. All right? Let me say a prayer for you. Father God, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your clear strategy way back in Genesis 12. Thank you for your clear example in the person of Jesus. Lord, I ask that what has happened here this morning will stick in our heads, that we'll remember these practices. It will stick in our hearts. There'll be a passion that burns for the people that are close to us, where we live, where we work, and we play. And Lord, help us to become just believers that your Great Commission, it's not something that's just aspirational, but it's actually achievable. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.